Good morning, Bucknutters. It's Thursday, November 14th, 2024. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change, coming to you a little later today. Life got in the way, but got a great show for you today. Obviously, the Buckeyes are headed to Wrigleyville. Going to play a football game in Wrigley Field against Northwestern. So much to go, so much you could make out of that. But let's talk about our sponsor first before I get the Dean, Bill Kurelic, and the Grand Poobah, Mark Porter, in here to chat. It's football season, and you know what that means. Time for tailgates, touchdowns, and Sunday cookouts with the crew. You need everything there. You need your good food, you need your good drinks, but you also need to be feeling good about yourself and smelling good. That's why Mando whole body deodorant should be a tailgate and game day essential. You're going to get stressed and sweaty when it's third and long and the game is on the line. Turn to Mando. Clinically proven 72-hour odor control. The cream is amazing. So it's perfect for long days or games at the bar. Bill. Safe for the whole body, pits, package, feet, and everywhere in between. Stops odor before it starts. Comes in 3 formats: invisible spray, solid stick, invisible cream. So however you like deodorant, they have your platform here. Not only that, it comes in 4 quality cologne level Bucknutter scents. Bourbon leather, that screams Bucknutter. Mount Fuji, Pro Sport, Clover Woods. I'm a bourbon leather guy myself. Shocker. Mando also has a great deal for you. And like we've said before here, the reason Mando and these other companies keep coming back, because you keep buying, and we appreciate that. And if you're going to do that, you need a deal. Mando's starter pack is also perfect for new customers. You want to secure some last-minute stocking stuffers for somebody? Great spot. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, mini wash, deodorant wipes, free shipping. I've got your discount code to get you hooked. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. So basically, you're getting 40% off the starter pack. Going to use the code. It's a tricky one. Bucknuts. Bucknuts is your code at shopmando.com. That can be a little tricky. shopmando.com. Shopmando.com. Don't let BO keep you on your bench. Smell better with Mando. Talk about some fine smelling individuals. Oh, Mark already sent me a message. Great. Got a big show for you today. We're going to talk Cruton. Not a home game this weekend. It's kind of the calm before the home game storm, as it were, to end the season. I said Ohio State is heading to play football at Wrigley Field. I'm not sure how I feel about that. That strikes me as people needing to get new turf ready to go, and that always makes me a little oogie, but we will get to that when it comes up. Bill, let's talk about recruiting. Ohio State has been doubling up, trying to finish off the class of 2025. They are hard at work building up for 2026, and there are some popular names coming into the vernacular here that are getting used over and over again. One of them, Savon Hider, arguably the best running back in the country. Our scouting service believes so. And the apple of Carlos Loughlin's eye right now. So can you bring us up to speed on kind of how they've built their relationship with Hider, what you think of him, what chances Ohio State has, and who is in the mix for the top back in the country? If you want to height, weight, maybe who he reminds you of, all that good stuff. The Savon Hider breakdown from the Dean starting now.
Well, show you how far back Ohio State offered Savon a scholarship. His offer came from Tony Alford, and that's a name we don't talk about a lot these days. But he was offered back in October of 2023 by Tony Alford. Since then, Carlos Loughlin has picked up on his recruitment, and has done a great job. They absolutely have a strong relationship, and Savon has been to Ohio State multiple times, including this past weekend for the Purdue game. It went, as expected, very well. Ohio State is going to be, unless something changes, Ohio State's going to be in his 5 finalists before he makes his decision. That decision is not close to happening at this point. He is going to get back to Ohio State. I expect him to make an official visit to Ohio State. Things are trending well for the Buckeyes, but it's going to be a process. While things are trending well, there are plenty of other suitors too. You mentioned size. He's 5'11", about 190 pounds now, and he's got the offer list you look for, certainly, as you would expect: Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, Penn State, and Tennessee is another one, big one. And most of those are the top schools he's looking at. So going to be a process. I expect him to go through it. I expect him to take official visits, and we'll see where it ends up at that point.
All right, let's bring on another name here. And this is a guy we've talked about a lot, and this is going to be the first time we put a little ooginess into this, and that is Quincy Porter. Wide receiver, Bergen Catholic, North Jersey. Been committed for a while. Visited Penn State. I'm always a little nervous about wide receivers, Bill, who aren't household names, because if you're not a household name, the chances you get to Ohio State and get your feet on the field as a true freshman aren't that good. And that allows the other schools to come in here and tell you you will get your feet on the field as a freshman. So can you bring us up to speed on Quincy Porter and your feelings on him now as opposed to maybe a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, Ohio State has 4 wide receivers committed at this point. They have Quincy, of course. They have Phillip Bell. They've got BP Miller. Certainly a guy that I really like potentially a lot. And Des Jones. Of the 4, the guy that is most game ready, so to speak, right now is Quincy Porter. How good is he? Well, if you've seen anything he's done his senior season, you will be wowed. I mean, and I was talking to someone yesterday for a comparison. People like comparisons. The comparison I was given for Quincy Porter is a pretty good football player. Marvin Harrison Jr. Size-wise, they're pretty similar. And I was told that Quincy might even be a shade just barely faster than Marvin Harrison Jr., at least at the same point when they were both seniors in high school. He's a guy that Ohio State absolutely does not want to lose from the class. We've talked a number of times about Ohio State not wanting to stack anymore 5-star great wide receivers on top of 5-star great wide receivers, because when they don't play right away, if you got 3 or 4 of them, 1 or 2 are probably going to leave and transfer. And they have done that this year. They've gone with a guy at the top, Quincy Porter, Phillip Bell, and then BP Miller is a developmental guy with great potential, and then Des Jones. So they've done that. They're not stacking 4 5-star wide receivers on the guys they got last year. He did Quincy Porter visit Penn State last weekend, and I still will go with liking Ohio State because of Brian Day, Brian Hartline, and the Ohio State passing attack. But as you pointed out, Dan, last time, it's kind of obvious. The road to the field is a little bit quicker if you're a wide receiver at Penn State than it is to Ohio State. So this one's not over by any stretch of the imagination. It's going to continue to be a battle.
I'm not saying this is accurate, but they could have called Quincy Porter, they being Penn State, after the Ohio State game and said, if we had you, we'd have had a much better chance, because the common refrain about Penn State now is they don't have the skill talent on the outside to separate. Hence, their offense gets bogged down. So it's a decent argument. The only problem with the argument is you go to college to get a job after college. And if you get on the field at Ohio State, go turn on the red zone or go watch football in the 1 and 4 windows in the NFL and start your stopwatch. Stop it every time they mention an Ohio State receiver. They'll go about 3 minutes. So there's a direct line to the pros, and it goes through Columbus for wide receivers. We know this. All right. Last question for Bill before we take the mute off of Mark that we want to do here. And that is about Tarvis Alford. So I noticed Brian Doan does a great job one of our 24/7 guys, spoke to Tarvis recently. And I noticed there was some alarm at Tarvis and his approach. I don't have this alarm because this guy is the poster child to me for modern recruiting, in that he announced his commitment and then announced where he was taking his 5 official visits after that. So he turned this whole thing on its side, and given the the amount of coaching upheaval and player upheaval and just general financial upheaval that goes on now, I don't know if you could blame the dude. Now, he did have some comments in the story that he's considering Florida State and Miami because they let their linebackers do more. Not sure that was for public consumption, but it ended up being consumed. Bill, your thoughts on Tarvis Alford in the long run? Will the Vero Beach linebacker end up a Buckeye or not?
Well, we talked about Quincy Porter, and Tarvis Alford is going to be a process too. And you mentioned the 2 Florida schools, Dan. You mentioned Miami, Florida State. I think Miami is the bigger threat at this point. In fact, I feel pretty strongly that they're the bigger threat at this point to Ohio State. Tarvis is basically indicated, he's still committed to Ohio State, but it's not signing day yet. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a battle. I mean, Miami has been able to use the NIL pretty well, and they've been able to flip some guys. I think they're probably going to flip at least 1 or 2 more guys in Ohio State. If you're a Buckeye fan, you hope one of them is not Tarvis Alford, but we'll see. Which you mentioned at the beginning of the show, Dan, the things are going to get really, really, really interesting recruiting-wise. Let's say Saturday afternoon after the Northwestern game, maybe, because the things you've got coming up, you've got 2 huge home games. Michigan, of course, we know that's going to be a huge recruiting weekend. But Indiana, that's turned into a big-time game now. There's going to be that's going to be a interesting recruiting weekend that will include quarterback Jared Curtis. So you've got 2 big weekends of games at Ohio State. Then you've got the early signing period, December 4th to December 6th, National Signing Day. A little bit different because they're not signing national letter of intents anymore. They're signing financial agreements. But that's still December 4th will be, quote, National Signing Day. After that, you've got the opening of the transfer portal, December 9th, I believe. And that will go for approximately a month. Ohio State fully expects to be in the college football playoffs at that point, too. So it's going to be, starting right after the end of that Northwestern game, a very interesting time for recruiting. It's going to rev up to a whole new level.
Keep this in mind, too, everyone, that over the next 3 or 4 weeks or so, a lot of impactful football games are going to be played elsewhere that are going to affect the futures of a lot of coaches. And once staff maneuvers are made, and once you look at a team like Auburn, I know that everyone knows we're looking at a couple guys from there. How is their season going to end? Once the staff is on the move, every guy in that class is kind of on the move too, possibly. So let's sit back and wait a little bit here. It's going to be a very, very interesting month or so. I also would these are uncharted waters when it comes to the playoff. You're going to have some very dramatic events going over the next month, and then the playoffs themselves are going to be tremendous. So we will keep an eye on that. Needless to say, it's helpful for Ohio State. Keep winning. Keep at the top of the board and go from there. All right, we're going to now knock out a bunch of questions.
And one more thing real quick.
William, you take it.
The flip situation down the stretch here, going to be really interesting. I mean, there are 5 guys that I could make a good case in regards to committing to Ohio State to keep an eye on. We've already talked about 2 of them today. We've talked about Tarvis Alford, and we've talked about Quincy Porter. We haven't talked about Zaire Mathis today. We certainly have a lot in the past. We haven't talked about Naeem Alford today, and we've talked about him a lot in the past. Jarquez Carter's got a number of schools trying to flip him. So there's 5 guys right there, keep in mind. And that's not even talking about guys that Ohio State is looking to flip. At the top, of course, 2 of the top guys would be Anthony Turbo Rogers, and you've got Malik Autry, certainly. And, that's just a couple that Ohio State is looking to flip as well. So it's going to be an interesting flip season, so to speak, that is revving up right now, too.
No, it's going to be very cool. Go ahead, Mark.
Damola Ajidhan, another one, too, by the way.
Bless you. Go ahead.
I'd like to join the podcast at 16 minutes into the thing.
Why don't you name – who are you again?
Yeah. I had an interesting –
You got the rest of it, Mark.
Talk with a college coach. And as you guys are talking, the conversation I had with him just keeps replaying in my head. Flip season. And I think we are accustomed in the past to thinking kids would flip in the past because of better school, better coaching, better development. Dan's been saying this forever. You come to Ohio State as a receiver, you're going to the NFL. That's the selling point. And these are the traditional selling points. And the college coach kind of pointed out that that's the old system. The new system is straight cash, homie. I mean, just salary cap. How much does your school have to spend? And Ohio State's going to be in the tier where they have one of the bigger caps. And we have to start looking at it like a cap, whether it was $22 million this year or in that area. It's never going to be truly reported, but you're going to have a ballpark of teams' caps. Oregon might have a bigger cap than Ohio State by what? 5 or 10 million or whatever it may be. Who knows? But my point being with the Quincy Porter, Ohio State's going to be able to pay their second or third receiver in the class pretty well. But at some point, that third receiver, Ohio State's going to get paid like a number one somewhere else. Someone else is going to say, hey, we can pay you like our number one. And that's going to be the new flip. Not that Brian Hartline didn't do a good enough job. Or we're not going to be able to pin this on the coaches as much as we have in the past, or Larry Johnson didn't sell that kid. This is just straight cash, and this is the new age, and it's not fun, and it's not good for places like Ohio State because there are guys, or you're going to see, and I don't want to predict this, but flip season, we're already talking about it. And that shouldn't be happening because Ohio State does have the best resources, facilities, schedule, so many things in the past that those are the selling points. But I hate to be Debbie Downer, but I just feel like these kids and these parents don't care about your tradition. They just don't care. They care about today and what's going to make their problems in life go away. And money's what does that. And this is a whole nother topic I think I'm getting into. But I think it's sad. And I think as I'm watching comments and I'm hearing us talking about it, like, oh, our coaches do such a good job. They're losing their power because I don't want to say this, but there's dirtbag schools that can go buy a great player who don't have the greatest coaches who are going to get excellent talent because of straight cash. So, okay, there's my soapbox.
I agree with you.
And I hate it. I don't like reporting that, but I feel that is a moral truth. And in talking to the college coaches, they hate it. They're disgusted by it. I don't want to give this guy's feelings away, but, Saban kind of said, I hate that we would develop players and then lose them for a check somewhere else. Like, I get up every morning and make sure this kid goes to class. I know his parents. I know his brother. I know his sister. I care about this kid. Oh, and they just offered him this, and this kid's gone. And the guy there doesn't care about him the way I did. It's a sad state of affairs, but that's the road we're on. I mean, you said it, they're signing financial agreements this year. It's going to be different from here on out.
I think at Ohio State, you got to look at it this way. And I said this to Dave the other day. And I'll tie this in with kind of the whole new playoff system. We've talked about depth and quality depth. The depth doesn't just help you perform well. It increases your margin for error or ability to withstand margin for error, if that even makes any sense. The example being, everyone thinks they made a mistake with Carson Hinsman and where he was placed and yada, yada. Well, the fact that they had a Carson Hinsman on the bench that they weren't using and got to experiment with, how many other teams have Carson Hinsman on the bench? Very few. I mean, Ohio State's depth is not just the young guy coming in. It's they have more better players, so they can make a mistake. Like, let's just say you think the left tackle was handled poorly. They were able to withstand it because they have guys on the bench and talent on the bench. Now, those guys, like Mark said, those are the guys you can't lose. That next level of borderline elite guys that come to Ohio State, and they haven't yet. So if they start to lose the Carson Hinsmans of the world, I definitely then think you are in trouble. And I'll say this: let me offer one positive thread to what you just said. I do agree that most people are bottom dollar and are going to go to the biggest bidder. However, this is a big country. There's a lot of people playing football. There is the level of player where pretty much that if your child does not get hurt and things go well, he's going to have a shot to play in the NFL. Let's take, for example, Team Sanchez. The elite of the elite are not affected by this. Thankfully, Ohio State goes after a lot of the elite of the elite. Duke basketball, they can afford to go after the 6 or 7 guys every year who aren't just great players, but can hack it academically. There aren't a trillion that can, but they can go after the 3 or 4. So Ohio State does have that advantage in the, let's just use the Devin Sanchez's of the world who, look, this is the truth. The Sanchez's after every game could have put their number on the internet and said, every game the price goes up, call us. We'll take the highest bidder at the end of the year. The computer will give us a number and we'll go there. Okay, but that is short term. And someone like Devin, who does literally, go look at how, I know the NFL is an average of 3 years. By the way, the reason that is because the 4th year you're vested. They don't want you to get to that unless you're a stud. If you're one of those guys, you're still, I don't care what anyone tells me, and this will work out this way, you're still better off going to Ohio State, even if you don't make as much money in NIL. Now, they are competitive in NIL, but the Ohio State pipeline to the NFL is not going to end. It's getting bigger. Just look. Now, you have to have some patience now, and you have to have some discipline to say, see, the problem is, not the problem, but the guys who are like Devin Sanchez are also, and I don't know this for a fact, or like Jeremiah Smith, they're getting the money. That's not the guys we're talking about. So, what Mark is talking about is the Quincy Porter level, where I am the number 3 at Ohio State, but I'm the number 1 at Penn State. So the question's then going to become over time. When that guy goes there, does he eventually become the NFL prospect that he would have been at the NFL? And listen, you can just plot that on, you can get someone smarter than me on an Excel spreadsheet and tell you. And believe me, this is being pitched both ways. Penn State's pitching it this way, and Ohio State's pitching it this way. Okay.
I think the real question is who's our 4 to replace Quincy if he goes, because that's your depth.
Sure.
This is going to be a major digression. Dan and I are Dallas and 49er fans, and this whole Ohio State thing parallels so well the Cowboys and the Niners in the 80s when there was no salary cap. Ohio State is in the driver's seat the same way the Cowboys and Niners were. Why? They had the most money, the nicest facilities. So within the game, they still had the biggest chips to go get the players. And that's why they dominated. And that's why the Ohio States, Alabamas, Georgias.
They could pay the backups.
Yes, they could. And they have the facilities, the coaching. They have the complete package. So within this new scheme that we're not liking, we're the king of this scheme. It's how long, like the NFL did, said, hey, no one else in college football likes this except you 15, 20 schools that have all the gold, that have the bigger caps. How do we put everybody on an equal cap and get parity like the NFL did? I don't know if college football ever really wants to go that direction. they like having their kings, so to speak, or their pool of 20 schools that are always going to churn and be the 20. And then within that churn, there's 5 or 8 that are really, have the money and consistency, the USC's, Oregon. I mean, you can name them. I think where things got unfair in the NFL, and you saw Ohio State do it this year, Judkins, Downs. Remember when the Niners brought in Deion Sanders and Charles Haley, and then the Cowboys brought in Sanders? It was just, what we don't have to scout anymore. We can go buy the obvious players that we know are already bona fide. We don't have to draft them and hope we develop them. Okay, so now when you were talking about Jeremiah Smith and Devin Smith, I want to classify
Devin Sanchez.
Those kids, as you look at them as freshmen, you can pretty honestly say that, you know what, they have a 10 or 12-year window where they're going to be playing football and making money. 3 or 4 years here and maybe a big NFL career. 4 years.
Barring injury.
So when you look at their financial picture, the first 3 years of it, like you're saying, are small numbers compared to what you're going to get. Now, a Quincy Porter or a wide receiver 3 or 4 or a linebacker 2 coming in a class, they're hoping they can just get on the field at an Ohio State. They're not truly coming in with the generational talent where they know they're going to have an NFL. Does BP Miller know he's going to have an NFL career right now? Do some of these guys coming in just, hey, it's a no-brainer, just like Jeremiah Smith. You're going to walk on freshman year, the NFL scouts start drooling. Those kids are in more of a developmental role, and they come out the other side of it as an NFL guy, and they may have a 6-year window, 8-year window. So if we could ever look at prospects and maybe the new way of evaluating and say, hey, this kid's a 10 or 12-year window player. This kid's maybe a 4 or 5-year window player. So how their money is structured, that's why a 4 or 5-year window player would want more money on the front end going somewhere, because I don't even know if I'm going to get out of here. The churn at this school may spit me out to another school in a year or two. I may not even get on the field here. So looking at players like that, what a nice compliment to the Sanchez is that we already know that you're going to master Ohio State and do well here. And we see the characteristics in you that the NFL is going to love what you bring to their table.
Here's the real question I just thought of that you brought up. The real question is, and I'm not saying he's transferring, so people don't say this. The real question is, if Quincy Porter goes to Penn State, does BP Miller become a better NFL player than Quincy Porter? And if that's the case, that's what I'm talking about. Let me ask you something.
Now we're back to evaluating and recruiting talent and doing homework. Like, hey, you got to take this kid, find this gem, polish it for a couple of years, and now it's better because it had the underlying talent that was raw, was undeveloped. There you go.
But yes, BP Miller is a lower rated wide receiver now than Quincy Porter. If Quincy Porter, as the higher rated player, goes to Penn State and is drafted behind BP Miller, they failed.
There you go. Yep.
That's what I'm saying.
And the new scheme is how many guys like BP Miller, 12.5-foot broad jump. The numbers are off the charts. He's just playing in Ontario and Ohio. When you say Ontario, people think it's Canada. Like no one knows.
Myself every time.
So you got as Ohio State, you have to do what other schools have done. That you see these NFL guys popping up on draft day, like, wow, I can't believe how many come from these oddball schools. At some point, those players had underlying talent develop, and it came out. Ohio State's bottom end of their roster is going to look more like that, where you're going to find these specimens that need polish.
All right. Darren Dorsey, great first name. This argument does not hold water. Look at Julian Fleming, to be fair. If that was really the case, Fleming should be thriving. Wrong. Nothing's a guarantee. Nothing is a guarantee. They're people. There's no guarantee that Quincy Porter is going to go to Penn State and do that. There's no guarantee that BP Miller won't come here, and after a week, they'll be like, good Lord, this guy's not a wide receiver at all.
Yeah, I mean, these are hypothetical.
Nothing is guaranteed, so that's not what we're saying. There are no guarantees, so that would hold water to those who want to take the money ahead of time. The job for Ohio State is to find the guys that are the complete package, that want to, I'm going back again, Team Sanchez, play at the highest level. You could make Texas high school football ridiculous. Has all the physical characteristics. has the grades, has the attitude, has the approach. There aren't that many dudes in the country like that. Those are the guys that go to Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, and stuff like that. I honestly believe this. People are thinking this is going to sound hyperbolic. Losing the Caleb Downs recruitment the first time around probably cost them the Michigan game because he would have been defending Colston Loveland one-on-one, and that's how we lost. So, you know what I'm saying? Those are the guys that do that. And I'll say this. When it comes to a position like Ohio State wide receiver track record, who caught the Hail Mary pass, Redskins versus the Bears? Noah Brown. Okay. Terry McLaurin never took a snap at Ohio State as more than the third wide receiver. Okay. He's a number one guy making generational money. Noah Brown has been in the league forever. If you can get to Ohio State and get out of here as a wide receiver, Paris Campbell still getting checks. You are going to get paid. Okay. You don't think you don't think Julian Fleming's going to be able to call Heartline next year and be like, hey, can you make a couple calls for me? You don't think Julian Fleming's going to get an extra free agent or someone to take a chance on him because of his So there are some guys who are that level and that you can get in. And as D says, this is true. You're taking the money ahead of time. That's fine. You can do that. But do the math. Football, if you're going to be a pro athlete, if you're getting into professional athletics for money, football is not the sport for you, dude. Okay? No guaranteed contracts. All you get your signing bonus. You could be a basketball player, blow your knee out. I watched this happen. I saw Kenyon Martin sitting on the bench at a game in Washington one night, and his knee was toast. He wasn't going to play. And I happened to go out with some of the guys on the Nuggets after the game, Eduardo Nahara, and I said, why is Martin on team? He's like, he loves to travel with the team and he loves going out. And he still makes every dollar. In the NFL, you be cut. It's a much different gig. So the short-term thinking guys, the beauty of Ohio State is you really don't need those guys. If a guy wants to come into Ohio State and is using you, Bill, let me ask you a question. I imagine a lot of people try and leverage Ohio State. You know what I'm saying? Why would Ohio State want those guys? Those are the guys that are going to bail on you when it gets adverse anyway. So do you think that goes into Ohio State's recruiting, how greedy the dudes are?
Oh, I think these angles we're talking about, we just talked for 15 minutes about it. If we were sitting in the staff room, as just men in general, hey, this kid's using us. He's using, it agitates you, and then you, like you're saying, like, do we really need guys in our locker room who are going to be using us for money and to get pay bumps and negotiating with us? Or do we want guys that just want to come here and get down to business, get an amount of money that is more than fair? Okay. And there's a way to show it's fair because there's going to be an average by position pretty soon, what everybody's getting. But I think these discussions are deep and there's a lot of angles to this. And at different schools, your ability to let people play you is a little more. Like, if you're the 7th or 8th place team, like, hey, we'll let this kid use us. We need him so bad that we're going to take, because we don't have anybody else that can do what he does. And so at Ohio State, you just don't have to take on those problems. And you can, if you're lucky, weed out a lot of personalities that will not mesh eventually. Because in every locker room, things go wrong and there's adversity, and you need guys there that are, thick as thieves and brothers, not ready to transfer in the portal, because that is such a eject button anymore that everybody has. I'm going to hit the eject button. I don't like what you said to me. I don't like my playing time. I don't like direction of the coachings. It's just constant. So I think, this plays more into things than we know. There may be great players that were like, why aren't they taking them?
Oh, you know why?
And they can't publicly say no why, but boy, it's a disaster.
Well, I'll say this. In a way, it's an advantage because I think money reveals character, or however they say that.
Yeah, lack of character. Yeah.
Whatever. So when you're doing the NIL process, you're kind of accelerating that, and it might be a sign to Ohio State, oh, these are people,
Yeah.
They're too into the dough. This ain't going to work. They probably are developing a way to categorize those two people and put them in a different bucket too. Don't you think?
I would pay good money to hear the top 5 delusional parent story.
Oh my God, it'd be the greatest thing ever.
If
People have no idea the delusion.
Come on here and say, Not going
Bill,
to
you should quit and write that book right now. Do it.
What parent came to you with the most absurd request for NIL, whether it was a loge every week?
No, but it won't be
private plane in. Like, I mean, who went to you with like, oh my gosh, we sat back in our chairs and said this was one for the books?
Well, I heard Warren Sapp say this, and so this is double hearsay, but he said that one of the things that got Saban out of it is a guy went into Saban's Saban's office and said, I want $900,000 and you got 48 hours. The idea of saying that to someone like Saban, my voice would be like quivering, and it depends. But
I mean, imagine that. Like,
but that's where we've gotten now.
Parent to walk into a person like Saban's offense and have the internal fortitude to be like, $100,000, buddy. Like, how do you think that relationship is starting off? Like, it just, and I think there is that level of delusion. We've all dealt with the general public, and you're going to see, a lot of people who have class and respect and whatnot, but then you're going to see, I think as we do a podcast, those stories would be fascinating if we ever got them.
Okay. Yeah. Look, listen, see, this is why they're the best example, because their child is the prototype and they are the prototype parents. The Sanchez's, for me, if you can see behind me, you can't see, you guys can see this. My number one athlete is Cal Jr. And I've told people if I found out Cal Jr. took steroids, I would start crying. If the Sanchez's don't turn out to be my favorite family, I'm on the verge of gonna have to change jobs or lose faith in humanity. No pressure on the Sanchez's for me personally, but your future is determining my future here in terms of faith. But that's what I'm trying to say. The more people you can get, my hope is in this process, like Dee said there, that Ohio State is doing a good job of kind of, maybe Ohio State, my hope is they're getting better at identifying those people earlier in the process. And that time that you would be spent haggling over zeros is spent, beating the bushes for better players and stuff like that. So, all right. Of course. Yep. See, I would like it too.
And I think, I don't know if the Patriots had success with this, but I think they were a big fan of, we don't need that number one pick. I'd like to take more second round picks and pay them less. So give me 4 second round picks. And, and if you're Ohio State, if you're going to say, hey, forget these guys that want the zeros, let's go get all these other guys. Because this is a numbers game too at the end of the game. Like you said earlier, as much as we know, we don't know. Guys get on campus 3 weeks later, they're out of there because they missed their girlfriend. So
almost Chris Olave.
Yeah. And so you need, it's nice to pay money for the no-brainers and all that stuff, but you need to really keep doing your evaluations, your homeworks, your camps, grinding guys, I think, and the portal, of course, do your evaluations through the portal. So I think it's a big picture here, but I wouldn't want to be the school like Tennessee or Miami that's just buying all the flash, because I think the rest of the roster suffers.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic. It really is, because
a top-heavy approach with your salary cap. Yeah, I forget
how you pay people and how you describe value is the key to doing business, man. It really is, and there's no guarantees when you're dealing with people. Go ahead, Mark.
Jerry Jones has done it right now. Dak, the defensive end, and the receiver. You're paying 3 guys all that money, and the rest of the roster is now going to do what? Suffer. And you can't pay 3 max contracts. It's not like the NBA. You get 1 max. So I think that max contract thing, it's tough. It's really tough.
I'm going to comment on this because Mark brought it up, but I want to comment on his Cowboys comment from earlier. Here's what actually happened. I was in a bar called Walnut Hills in Dayton, Ohio, in the middle of the summer. And you remember on ESPN, the TV was on no sound, and I saw them put a face up there, and it was Charles Haley's face, and the Cowboys logo was next to it. And I turned to one of my friends and said, we just won the effing Super Bowl. Our main competition just gave us their best player because he's insane. I happened to wait tables and wait on Charles Haley after college, and he lived up to it. I could tell you some great stories, but I'm not going to do that. What happened with free agency was
Charles Haley threw me in a lake one time.
I can tell you worse, way worse.
But that's
unbelievably worse.
I knew him, yeah.
Unbelievably worse. The problem with the Cowboys was free agency didn't exist. If you look at the 93 Cowboys team that won the Super Bowl, the second one, they won back-to-back. They were the youngest team in the league. Free agency kicked in the next year. So those of you who hate the Cowboys are lucky because Jerry Jones could have paid everybody. Go look this up. There were 27 Pro Bowlers on that team. 27. 5 to 10 subs got picked to go to other teams and started. So that killed the depth. 1 year, another Super Bowl, and then downhill. So those of you who don't like free agency in football, just know the Cowboys would have won like 9 Super Bowls in a row. I'm not even slightly. That's 100% fact. Just kidding. All right. Quick questions, and then we'll get out of here. Yeah, seriously. We're passionate about this process for our kid. Like we said, as long as it ends up good for us and we don't look silly, that's fine. And Darren Dorsey does spell his name correctly. I told you guys that. That's my favorite name. I spent 10 years knowing that if I had a boy first, that would be his name, and voila.
I mean, the Browns tanked themselves with a quarterback.
Oh, my God.
I mean,
William,
there's ways that hero thing can go wrong on you in a hurry.
As I've said, it's Cleveland at least has 2 legitimately good franchises.
Here comes the Cavs.
Cleveland Indians and the Cleveland Cavaliers.
I think it's a perfect
The
way to
third
end
one is, oh, my goodness.
the skipjacks. All right. All right. That was fun. Hope we didn't go too off on a tangent there for you guys. We will have a ton of coverage this weekend, obviously. The Buckeyes go to Wrigley Field. Will it be a homecoming for Carnell Tate? I'm not going to give away my roundtable MVP for the game, but it may be number 17, who, by the way, isn't it nice to have your third receiver be a future first-round draft pick? Obviously, good stuff. If you're a receiver like Quincy Porter, maybe you want to keep an eye on that. That's just me. Again, Buck Nuts, not Buck Rational Observer. I am biased. So I'm biased also to know that I'm lucky to work with these 2 dudes. They'll be back next week and working all over the weekend. Keep in mind, playoff time in Ohio. We will have some tremendous content out of that as well. Have a good one.